Okay, so now we're going to have a look at ions that are made up of more than one atom. Simple as that. So this is your table of ions that you need to know in year 11. You'll always be given that, so you don't need to learn them off by heart. You'll be given the name, like carbonate, and you'll be given the formula. So let's look at an example. Let's look at zinc reacting with an acid to form the salt and hydrogen. We have to know that zinc is Zn, sulfuric acid is H2SO4, and that's just something you're going to have to memorize, and it becomes zinc sulfate. So this is where you look for your table of ions. Sulfate is right there, SO4. Zinc SO4 plus hydrogen gas is always H2. Now we have to check that zinc sulfate is actually correct. Is that the correct formula for zinc sulfate? How do we know that? Well, we've got to look at the charges. Okay, so zinc on our periodic table, I've lost my periodic table, but I know that it's Zn2 plus. There's my periodic table. How do I know that? Because it's in the transition metals, and so it's Zn2 plus. Also, it's always going to be given to you, that one, because it's a transition metal. It's not that straightforward to look at from the periodic table, so you'll be given that on your table of ions. Zinc is 2 plus. So Zn 2 plus, write your charges first. Sulfate has always got a charge of 2 minus. Okay, so you don't have to memorize that. You can look it up on your table of ions. Because they're a 1-to-1 ratio, so there's 2 positives and 2 negatives, when we do our swap and drop, remember that I've said before that if it's a 1-to-1 ratio, you just drop the charges and you don't put a 1, you don't put a 2, you put the Zn and the sulfate. Oh, we don't put that charge. That was a mistake. That's exactly what we don't do. So zinc sulfate. So let's look at another example. Calcium hydroxide. So calcium, it's in the periodic table. You can see it's in group 2. So it's got 2 valency electrons. So it's going to have a charge of +2 when it's an ion. So calcium hydroxide is in your table of ions. It's made up of 1 oxygen and 1 hydrogen, and it's got a charge of -1. So this is where we do our swap and drop. The 2 is going to come down here, and because it's a 1, you don't put a 1, you just write calcium. The fact that you've got the calcium symbol there means it's a 1. This is where it gets interesting. If I put a 2 here, what I'm saying is there's 2 hydrogens, but I'm referring to the whole ion. So I need to put brackets around this. That means that there's 2 hydrogens and there's 2 oxygens. See, we can't split that up. That's an ion, they're joined together, and we can't split them up. So if I want to double or triple or quadruple them, I have to put brackets around them and put the little 2 on the bottom right hand side, just like that. Let's have another look at one more example. Let's look at lead nitrate. So lead is on your table of ions. You can see it there, 2 plus. Nitrate has got -1. So again, we swap and drop it. So the 2 is going to come down here, and there's going to be a 1 for lead. Because it's a 1, we don't write 1, we just write the symbol. And because I need a double, so I'm saying that I need 2 nitrates, that whole ion. And that whole nitrate ion is made up of 1 nitrogen and 3 oxygens. So it looks something like this. Nitrogen, here's a bond, here's a bond, here's a bond, and there's 3 oxygens attached to 1 nitrogen. So that's what we mean when we write NO3. So these oxygens are attached to the nitrogen. We can't separate them. So going back to our swap and drop, we've got Pb. Now we know we need 2 of these nitrates. So that's why we put brackets around them and we put a 2. So what we're saying is, so don't get confused by the little 3. That 3 has to stay there. We can't change that. We need to put brackets around it. What we're saying is we've just times that whole thing by 2. So what you got is, let's rub that up because it looks messy, 1 nitrogen attached, bonded to 3 oxygens. We've got 2 of these. So we can't mess with the numbers of the oxygens or the nitrogens. That's why we have to put brackets around it. And if you're going to double it or triple it or quadruple it, you have to do it to the whole thing. So that's why you put brackets and you put the little number on the bottom there. So that's lead nitrate.